Do you fancy bringing an animal sacrifice in your own back garden? I don't really think you do. In fact, even if you really wanted to, I'm afraid to tell you, it's absolutely forbidden by Jewish law. But this wasn't always the case. There was a time when private animal sacrifices were very popular. This isn't the time and place to get into all of the reasons for why we have animal sacrifices in Judaism in general, but Maimonides does tell us that as long as the tabernacle was housed in its temporary structures, it was also permissible for any individual to bring their own private sacrifices, which means that any individual was allowed to build their own altar in their own back garden and bring their own sacrifices. However, once the temple was built in its permanent structure, all forms of private sacrificial offerings became forbidden, and it would only be permissible to bring korbanot, the sacrificial offerings, in the holy temple. Offering a sacrifice anywhere else is a biblical violation. As King David says regarding the holy temple in Jerusalem, "This is the house of Hashem, and this is the altar for the offerings of Israel." Of course, once the temple was destroyed, all forms of sacrificial offerings stopped completely. So we don't have sacrificial offerings these days. However, the spiritual significance of this mitzvah is eternal and is very much applicable, even in our times. You see, even when the temple stood, the animal sacrifice was symbolic of a far greater sacrifice, that of the person bringing the offering themselves. The person bringing the korban was expected to undergo an inner change, resolving to sacrifice their own internal animalistic desires and tendencies, to be able to give up some of their own urges and passions, which may not necessarily be in sync with the will of Hashem. This type of sacrifice is certainly relevant and very much necessary, even in our time. This is also why the Hebrew word for sacrifice, korban, comes from the root of kiruv, closeness, because the whole idea of a korban, of a sacrifice, was in order to bring a person closer to Hashem. A little less of his own ego, a little more room for another, and a whole lot closer to Hashem. So we may not have animal sacrifices these days, but we can certainly get on with sacrificing our own internal animal. Thank you so much for watching.